Listen to the critics of television, and we're putting our kids at risk every time we switch on.
Particularly with children, it makes them fat, stupid, lazy, indifferent, corrupt and violent.
But not so, according to Associate Professor Catherine Lumby from Sydney University, who says TV watching is all about balance.
What the research tells you is that if you give your children age-appropriate television, you balance it with other things, it's fine. In fact, it encourages early literacy and numeracy, and it's part of children's lives. They take it into their creative play.
The former journalist turned academic has studied the issue for the past 8 years, and with 2 children of her own has published a book arguing that many hang-ups about TV and parenting in general are based in myth, not fact.
You don't want your child kicking a soccer ball for 8 hours a day. They shouldn't be watching TV for 3 hours a day. Probably around 2 hours with any screen-based media is good if your child's at school. But, listen to your own instincts. That's what is important.
So what's Catherine's advice for a happy TV-equipped household?
We scrutinise everything we do about looking after our children, and I think we all need to sit down and have a good cup of tea or a glass of wine and put our kids in front of Play School or PlayStation and relax occasionally.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Originally from the Hunter region, Nathan Campbell has spent the last few years refining his technique with some of Australia's best triathletes on the Gold Coast. But with several major events on the horizon, the prodigal son decided it was time to return to the comforts of home.
I wasn't happy with my coach in Queensland, and I didn't think I was running fast enough for the Worlds, and I wanted to come back and train with a specialist running coach to get faster for the run.
Now under the expert guidance of running coach Ben Higginbottom and swimming coach Peter Morrow, the under-23 Oceania champion says he's injury-free and fitter than ever. Even complications with removalists during his change of address have failed to damp his enthusiasm.
A lot of my race gear went missing, and I'm still having a lot of problems trying to get it back, so I'm racing on a lot of borrowed equipment at the moment.
A weekly training schedule of 30 Ks in the pool, 400 on the bike and 100 in the joggers has the 22-year-old gunning for a top 5 finish at the World Championships during a massive month of racing.
Firstly, I'm racing the Geneva European Cup, which is just more so a hit out for Worlds, and 2 weeks later is the World Champs in Lausanne, Switzerland. Then 1 week later I race the World Cup in Germany, Hamburg.
Campbell says his ultimate goal is Beijing in exactly 2 years. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. A must-win game for Olympic, but with a full moon in the sky, strange things were happening on the pitch as underdog Toronto Awaba dictated terms. The visitors had the best of the early exchanges, Adam Routledge wasting this opportunity. 20 minutes in and a foul on striker Ricky Metcalf gave Toronto a free kick on the edge of the area. Peter McPherson using the wall and some luck to claim a 1-0 lead. Toronto continued to test Olympic keeper Andrew Goldman with several chances sailing inches wide. Against the run of play, Hamilton earned a corner, and after a perfect delivery to the back post, Brett Studman headed the home side level. With their season on the line, Olympic was finally off and running. Alex Prevost close to stealing the lead before half-time. After the break, Hamilton started strongly. A corner after 10 minutes, and this time the ball fell perfectly at the near post, as Studman grabbed a double and Hamilton kept its season alive. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's a challenge, but it's something I like to do. I love giving it to the guys as well. It's a bit of fun.
We first introduced you to little Jake Sylvester 2 years ago when he grabbed Kelly Slater's broken surfboard as a souvenir at Surffest. It was a big hit at Show and Tell, but Jake is a little older now and the 13-year-old has some serious competition wins under his belt, including a Rip Curl Grom search.
I hope to do well in the next couple of years doing the Grom searches in state and then do well in the Pro Junior and hopefully get to the CT.
Jake on the left and 14-year-old Ryan Callanan are working with surf coach Dan Frodsham under the Hunter Institute of Sport banner. It's the second year of the Institute's involvement in surfing and it seems to be paying dividends for the young riders.
They get food like nutritionists and Dan and Paul coach that helps heaps and just comp strategies and all stuff like that.
The academy helps us out with training and getting fit and stuff, and just being part of a team is really fun.
We've got sort of kids from all the way down to Catherine Hill Way all the way up to Foster, so there's plenty of young kids around keen to get out there surfing.
Jake and Ryan have both managed to secure sponsorship and are working towards the state titles in Coffs Harbour next month. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It was difficult to miss the high police presence at Maitland Courthouse today. Around 20 officers had the entrance surrounded in readiness for any security breach. Before entering the courthouse, everybody was checked by corrective service officers with metal detectors. It's believed that earlier in the day, relatives and friends of those charged over yesterday's drug busts had been communicating with those in the cells from outside court. Police simultaneously searched 6 premises across the Hunter yesterday, seizing methamphetamines and cannabis. Police have been watching the home since January under Strike Force Islander, with undercover police purchasing drugs from the accused, along with covert electronic surveillance. 7 people appeared in court today, 5 of them at Maitland, the rest at Raymond Terrace Court, most of them charged with supplying and possessing prohibited drugs. 3 members of one family, Christine, Lisa and Randall Barker, were among those to appear at Maitland. Lisa Barker from Wallsend, the mother of a 7-month-old baby, broke down in court when she was told that her bail application was refused, shouting, "Oh hell, what about my baby? Want to take my baby." All 7 were refused bail to reappear on August 23 in Newcastle. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Her townhouse ablaze, it was this upper floor window Gayleen Short leapt out of yesterday morning to save her life. Having suffered multiple fractures to her skull and body and severe burns, the mother of 5 remains in a critical condition in hospital.
A very, very difficult time. A young mother, 5 children, and she's severely burnt and seriously injured.
Everything but a handful of belongings were destroyed in the blaze, prompting an appeal for community help. A fund set up today received a $1,000 kickstart from the Companion Credit Union.
Anyone can deposit money to the ANZ or Companion Credit Union.
Newmac Community Housing, located on Hunter Street, will also accept donations in kind of clothing and toys as well as appliances.
Sometimes we've all got to just pull together as a community and for the benefit of 5 small children.
Those who'd like to donate can do so at any branch of the ANZ Bank or by calling Companion Credit Union on 131 609. Christy Carter, NBN News.
It's looking a bit like a mini Gold Coast at Nelson Bay at the moment, and rising just as fast as the new apartment blocks are concerns that the bay is losing its charm.
The height restrictions have gone out the window. The 15-metre height restrictions on all the buildings has gone, and people are virtually able to put the height on that they want so that they can get a view over the skyscraper in front of them.
Only about 45,000 people live on the Tomaree Peninsula, but that number doubles with visitors in the summer months, clogging traffic and putting strain on the understaffed medical polyclinic.
Yes, we're going to have to cope with more people. We have to have infrastructure improved to cope with those people.
The Mayor, who's also running to be a Liberal state member, blames any overdevelopment on the state government.
It should be pointed out that most of the units that are being developed in Nelson Bay were approved under the coastal policy by the New South Wales Department of Planning, without consultation with the council.
A public meeting will be held to discuss the issue at the Nelson Bay RSL Club next Wednesday night at 7:30. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Disability Minister John Della Bosca openly admitted today disability funds haven't been spent in the right way in recent years, but he says from today that will change, unveiling plans to plough almost $170 million into enhancing disability services and new support programs across the Hunter.
More than 11,000 hours of community participation for young people leaving school with a disability. There'll be more therapy places, both adults and children, and of course right throughout the Hunter we'll have a lot more respite services and new supported accommodation services. These are the kinds of things that families have been telling us they need.
The move is welcomed by disability service provider Life Activities, who'll now be able to better meet their clients' needs.
That's been taken care of. More places for school leavers to be supported, more places for people who need respite and who need specialist services. And there's also flexibility in the system to allow every individual to get the support they need.
Despite the boost, more respited accommodation services are still on the wish list.
If the government can get more into that area, even more than they're doing now, that will go a long way towards solving some of the problems that keep recurring.
In order to improve the levels of care, we also have to improve the models of care. We have to manage change so it doesn't cause any adverse effects for people, but we have major improvement in this plan.
Christy Carter, NBN News. This is one of the earliest photographs of the historic school taken back in the 1870s. And while these ladies certainly weren't around then, they are some of the oldest former pupils and teachers, including Sister Colette Hulse in the middle, whose great-grandmother also attended St John the Baptist.
I started school here in 1935, and to think that I'm back here in 2006, it's wonderful.
Parents helped to celebrate the milestone, enjoying a day at school, including lunch in the schoolyard, while former pupils reminisced about the good old days.
Well, it's 150 years since the foundation stone was laid for our building across there. It was laid on April the 7th by Dean Lynch, who was the priest at the time.
Meanwhile, Waratah West Public School also marked a special occasion today, which encouraged students to learn about Aboriginal culture. A traditional Aboriginal message stick carved by Elder Gary Pop Simon was handed over by Fennell Bay Public to Waratah West. The message stick will travel to 1,600 schools across New South Wales. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Well, I think, looking at our team, I think for most of the blokes, is going to be probably the biggest game they've played in their careers. I think it's that important to us.
This weekend's round will prove to be a good indicator for which teams are serious about the title in 2006. This weekend we have the benefit of all top 6 teams playing each other. While the form lines of each teams are so different, some on a winning streak while others are spiralling down, with 4 matches before the semi-finals and places so tight, these teams will all be standing to attention. It all starts tonight when 4th place Newcastle take on Manly, who are in 5th position at Energy Australia Stadium. And then it's Super Sunday with 2 huge games. 3rd place Broncos up against competition leaders the Storm, followed by the 2nd positioned Bulldogs up against the Dragons, who are in 6th spot. I've tipped all the top ranking teams to win those games. They should be excellent clashes. Good to see South Sydney winger Nathan Merritt finally getting some accolades from his peers. He is the league's leading try scorer on 20 tries. What's amazing, everyone, is that he's playing in a team who's coming last and only won 3 games. Well done, Nathan. Who said front rowers are dumb? Penrith Joel Clinton was ready to deliver this Barry brainbuster when he realised midway through he was looking at an 8-week suspension, and in an instant tipped him nicely back to earth without any problems. And finally, Knights winger Brian Carney has produced one of the best pantsing I've seen for a while. Roosters' Ryan Cross went over for a try, but his pants didn't. On to round 23 tonight. I like the Knights. 3 games Saturday, Warriors, Eels and Panthers, and Sunday it's the Storm, Bulldogs and Tigers. I'd like to congratulate St Bridges Primary School there at Brankston, who won the Paul Harrigan Cup and go through the Legends Cup in Sydney later this month. Good luck, and good luck with your tips. I'll see you next week.
One of 4 Jets in the Socceroos squad, Joel Griffiths, began club commitments today. A welcome return to Newcastle after trying his luck in the UK.
We had a good bunch of guys at Leeds, which was good. They made me feel welcome. It was just unfortunate that I didn't see eye to eye with the gaffer there.
As such, he's already found ways to keep his new coach on side.
Joel will be the A-League signing of the year, and I'm sure that's not putting any additional pressure on Joel. That's just highlighting what I genuinely believe, and
and he's money well spent according to the Jets, should he achieve just one thing.
Goals.
A philosophy the 26-year-old is comfortable with after playing out of position overseas.
Going back up front, I'm looking forward to scoring some goals, and hopefully I'll come with the Jets.
I believe that Joel will give us 2, hopefully 3 wins during the course of the year. So an additional 6 points from Joel Griffiths in the squad is more than enough.
Coach Nick Theodorakopoulos is yet to decide if he'll start Griffiths for their pre-season Cup semi-final match with the Mariners in Gosford tomorrow night. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. It's been a real case of the blues for Macquarie, bundled out of finals football by Nelson Bay this time last year, and the Scorpions have been haunted ever since.
They're the only side that we haven't beaten this year, so that's an added incentive for us to really dig in. They've got, good halves, and Leo Denver's always handy.
With a handful of injuries, Macquarie captain coach Dan Quinn had pinned his hopes on having this week off. The Scorpions looked every chance of taking the minor premiership too, until they were pipped by Lakes.
We nudged in front with a couple of weeks to go, and I think we switched off a little bit and Cessnock give us a fair touch-up, but we needed that coming into it.
In a short time from now, Wanderers and University will fight out the season decider in the women's grand final of Newcastle and Hunter Rugby. Their male counterparts play tomorrow, with the students out to wrestle the Hawthorn Cup from the Waratahs. In other matches, Merewether hosts Nelson Bay, Wanderers travel to Maitland, Hamilton's at home to Eastern Districts, and Lake Macquarie's on the road to Singleton. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. There was always going to be plenty of feeling in this match, and it didn't take long to show. From one wing to the other, Wests went wide and Aaron Resch finished off. Cessnock was quick to level its first 4-pointer thanks to number 4 Daniel Forder. Such is the nature of finals football, things nearly boiled over as the hosts felt the pressure, and with good reason. Willie Palaio gave the visitors an 8-point lead, a margin which only grew. Wests played catch-up through Andrew Hickey, then Aaron Resch for his second, But it just wasn't enough. West's bundled out by a spirited Cessna.
Hey, I may not go down in history. I just want lose control and I'm all over the place. But I'll be home soon. I'll never like you great. 6 a.m. on a Sunday. Pick up the phone and I hear him not sing. Hey, Midas, they say you have a magic touch.
From next Saturday, these 8 amateur cyclists will use pedal power to raise funds for the Hunter Medical Research Institute and the Westpac Rescue Helicopter.
They're two valuable assets in the Newcastle area, which both take a lot of money to run.
For the last few months, most have trained 6 days a week for the epic 25-day ride from Perth across the Nullarbor to Newcastle. At more than 4,000 kilometres long, the ride has been broken down into stages of between 175 and 300 kilometres a day. The cyclists haven't ever completed a ride of such gruelling duration.
Not for 4 weeks. We all do the Westpac helicopter rides, which are sort of 7 days or 8 days. We all do those. Nothing that's sort of 3 to 4 weeks now.
But they say they'll be happy to brave bike seat bruises if they can raise $50,000 for the worthy causes. The tally has been kick-started by donations from the Australian Hoteliers Association, Crosby Warren Sinclair Lawyers and Action Cycles at Raymond Terrace.
Fairly hard, there's no doubt about that. 175 k's a day is our average, so it'll be fairly hard. 3 of them's going to need oxygen after about the 4th day. The rest of us will probably take 3 weeks.
Anyone wanting to support the Perth to Newcastle charity ride can do so by contacting 4923 4000. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Implementing the proposed sanctuary zones in the marine park won't be easy if the Newcastle and Port Stephens branches of Ecofishers get their way. At the group's final protest meeting, members said they plan to bog the state government down in paperwork when the public submission phase closes next month to delay the zones coming into force.
We're hoping that we'll have enough forms to drop in on the final day that they won't have had a consistent time to put them in evenly. We hope that we have a big batch of them that will take them a while to get through.
We're trying to get the message to the government that the public doesn't want their rights and freedoms traded for political bargaining chips.
The group wants the proposed sanctuary zones changed, saying they'll be left with no good fishing spots.
We'd prefer to have the 20% that they've taken than the 80% they've left us.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. It's 39 years since Martin Susans last saw this ejector seat. In September 1967, he used it for an emergency exit from a Mirage fighter jet identical to this one after an engine failure during a routine navigational flight over the Barrington Tops. The experience was one he's never forgotten.
Initially, the seat tumbled backwards, I could feel that, and then the stabilising drogue deploys and the ride was quite comfortable from then on down to 10,000 feet when the automatic separation took place and the seat fell away and I descended with my own parachute.
The seat was then lost in bushland for 2 years until it was found by a local farmer.
He spent every weekend, I'm told, on his horse out riding in the Gloucester Tops looking for the seat, and he eventually found the seat, crashed down a ravine, and he thought that no one would have wanted it by then, so he hung it in his shed.
It's now been donated to Fighter World's museum. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Despite being unwelcome at many sporting venues, Peter Hoare made his latest bid for infamy minutes before full-time on Friday night, and with the Knights closing the gap on Manly.
Hardly the time to do it. Well, this is ridiculous. This is going to hold up play when Newcastle want a quick restart.
Even though up to 100 ground security and police should have kept the serial pest out, Waratah Police Commander David Swilks today supported his officers' handling of Friday night's crowd.
When you look at it in perspective, we're talking about 25,000 supporters there. We've one incident where a person is able to get onto the pitch. With the 29 police we had at the ground, we were quite happy with the policing.
It was the second time in season 2006 Hoare has intruded into an NRL match at Energy Australia Stadium, and he can now expect a future appearance before a much smaller audience.
In the case for this person in particular, even though he'll be dealt with by a future court attendance notice, after this, if he does repeat the offence, certainly he'll probably find it to be much more severe.
And police have today warned all spectators that EA Stadium is covered by the Pitch Invasion Act, and those supposed seconds of fame could cost ground invaders a fine of up to $5,500. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Even if you grew up in a popular seaside suburb like this, it's highly unlikely these days that you could afford to buy your first house in that same suburb. Up until the 70s, a house was worth about 3 times the average wage. Now it's up to 6 times and rising.
Well, house prices have gone up significantly with costs associated to government legislation and environmental levies, but it's the cost of the land which has really gone up. In the last 10 years, we've seen the cost of land almost triple.
The Institute says regional prices remain more realistic because there's still plenty of land available.
Of course, Sydney's always going to be to an extreme because of the amount of people that live there and the acute shortage of land around Sydney. Here in the Hunter, it's not so bad. We still have a large availability of land that is currently being rezoned, but there's still a lot of people wanting to come and live in the city. So certainly affordability has become a little tighter, but not as bad as Sydney.
Under $300,000 will buy you this 2-bedroom house in Newcastle. That's the price of an empty block of land on the fringe of Sydney. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Their theatres of service span World War II, Korea, Vietnam and national service. Their latest enlistment is for the first educational tour of duty to be conducted by Waratah Mayfield RSL sub-branch. The challenge this time, the computer, after the federal government funded the purchase of the technology because the course will have a wide-ranging practical benefit for the veteran community.
We're happy for people to come along, bearing in mind it's for ex-Defence Force personnel, our RSL members and outsiders who are ex-Defence Force personnel and their families.
For some, it was the first time they had even been up close and personal with a PC, but this time their battle is being driven by age and enthusiasm to be educated.
They all want to learn. They know there's computers there. Their grandkids are telling them, hey, get a computer, we can write to me. And they're all going, yeah, but how do I learn about it?
The sub-branch is aiming to give another 10 participants the chance to tackle the computer front before the end of the year. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Jancis Robinson has been tasting, judging and writing about wine for the past 30 years and is regarded as one of the world's foremost wine connoisseurs by those in the industry. This week she's serving on the Hunter Valley Wine Show's judging panel, trying to find the region's best drop. With almost 1,000 wines from 118 growers, that choice won't be easy, but after just one day on the job, it seems she's already made some headway.
Semillons are looking absolutely brilliant, and there's nowhere else in the world that makes better dry Semillon.
However, other varieties aren't faring quite as well.
Chardonnays, I was judging a class of older Chardonnays from 2004 back, and they're not aging very well in general. I think Hunter Valley has its specialities, but perhaps shouldn't do everything.
While that might sound harsh, offering advice about how to improve wines, or in this case, what wines to let fall by the wayside, is what the show's all about.
Really, a wine show is about getting feedback to the winemakers and the grape growers and the vignerons about wine styles and what's doing well and what's not.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Out towards the back of Broke and up the road a bit, there's a motto these drivers live by. If at first you don't succeed, keep trying until something breaks. Even then, the show's not over. It's the World Extreme Rock Crawling Championship Series, and this was the final round. Some drivers had nothing to lose, with the exception of maybe a drive shaft, axle, transmission, and that's on a good day. Series champion in his class, Pete Antonak from Sydney, had no trouble scaling the rock. Getting off, though, wasn't his textbook.
You can't defy gravity. You try to, but it doesn't work.
It's not all rough and tumble, it's actually quite technical. The teams get penalised 10 points for touching a marker and 1 point for reversing to have another go.
Has there ever been a time when you think I'm in trouble here?
Yeah, nearly every course, but that's what your spotter's for.
A monster machine helps too.
There's not too much they can't do, but everything has its limitations. I think the driver is a limitation most of the time, though.
They're limited by timing as well. Crews receive 45 minutes for each day of competition to make running repairs and just 10 minutes to complete the course, finishing at all costs. The top 2 teams from each class will represent Australia at the World Final in Las Vegas. For the spectators at Milbrodale, though, they've already won. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. The Jets have no issues with fitness. Their coach Nick Theodorakopoulos says they could have played another 30 minutes even after extra time on Saturday night. That's when the Mariners found their second goal and the match winner, their first surrounded by controversy.
Gave the benefit of the doubt to the offensive side where he could easily have given it to the defensive side. So the benefit of the doubt, I feel, went the wrong way, and they subsequently scored that penalty.
The result aside, there was a lot to like about the Jets' performance. A man down, they still had their chances, with Joel Griffiths and Nick Carl showing plenty of promise. Rookie goalkeeper Ben Kennedy also continues to impress both coach and players.
They would be very confident having him behind the goal. So I just feel that we need that next calibre of goalkeeper for the next 12 to 24 months.
Both clubs were expecting a tough battle, and that's what they got. But relief for Andrew Durante, who's ready to go again after he suffered a season-ending leg break in a game against the Mariners last year.
It was a lot different for me this time around playing. Disappointing we didn't get the win, but it was good to be back playing and get the 90 minutes.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News. Three birdies and an eagle in the final round saw Nathan Green pick up an extra 11 points, representing a late charge. Sitting in 7th place going into the final hole, the Tour rookie fell painfully short of bagging the birdie. Even so, he remained on 29 points to finish a respectable 9th. And a week after their record-breaking win, it was a much closer result for the North Stars last night. The hosts scored first before Sydney fought back, but a long-range attempt saw Newcastle win by 2 on the right path to a spot in the finals. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
With the NRL finding the referee got it wrong with the controversial decision involving Manly's Steve Matai, Andrew Johns today pleaded guilty to the touch judge abuse that followed. But the Knights want to minimise any suspension their star number 7 could receive by the NRL judiciary. At this stage, Johns could be out for 3 matches. Newcastle hopes a downgrade of the charge will possibly cut that to 2, making him available for the final series. Newcastle argues Johns wasn't alone in swearing on field last weekend. Among Novocastrians, there is some acceptance that Johns acted out of frustration.
He shouldn't have done what he's done, but I think he was entitled to.
He's just like a little boy.
Understandable at the moment, but yeah, it's obviously can't be accepted really.
Especially the language, and there was no need for it.
However, their message is clear that unsportsmanlike behaviour is unacceptable.
No, definitely not. Like, he's let his team down, he's let the city of Newcastle down, and I think as far as being a role model, he's not one at all.
From him being the #1 sportsman, probably Newcastle being, you know, like all these young kids, you know, getting around, you know, looking up to him and that, you know, like I didn't think it was really a good thing to see.
And while there have now been 3 incidents of on-field misconduct by Knights players within a month, Coach Michael Hagan says it results from the intensity of the game.
Because of the passion and the emotion attached to playing the game, and I think if you haven't really experienced that as a player, very difficult to understand that.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
They're million-dollar views the community wanted to keep in public hands. But when this land goes under the hammer tomorrow, it's most likely the vista will be secured for a privileged few. The campaign to stop the sale of the Dudley land came to a disappointing end yesterday when the Suburbs Progress Association received correspondence from the Minister for Health's office. While I understand your concern about the future of the site, I can advise the land is surplus to the needs of Area Health Service, it said. Therefore, the site will be offered for sale by auction as planned.
We felt that we were badly done by. This matter should have been handled by the Premier, and it wasn't. It went down to the Health Minister's Parliamentary Secretary, who really shouldn't be the deciding person in this case.
Meanwhile, Lake Macquarie City Council will brief residents on Thursday night on the deal to sell land, including Ferris Oval, to the company behind the expansion of Charlestown Square for $10.2 million.
Those members of the community that would like to come along and see what it is we're actually talking about and what the community is going to be receiving can come along and ask questions at that.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Somewhere between 10 and 30% of the hunters' population is expected to be struck down by the flu this season. Doctors say they've already seen the season's first wave of cases and they're urging people to get immunised.
So if you haven't yet had your flu immunisation, it's not too late. Really, this is your last chance.
People with an increased risk of catching the disease are those aged over 65 or 50 if they're of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent, and anyone over 15 with an underlying medical condition. This year, the Hunter New England Health Service is attempting to chart and follow the disease's spread through the community using epidemic reporters. Anyone aged over 18 can take part in the study by registering on www.flutracking.net.
It'll give us a great chance for the first time to really get a feeling for what's happening about influenza symptoms out in the community.
Doctors say those suffering from the flu can do a few simple things to help prevent its spread.
Stay away from other vulnerable people if you can, but cover your mouth and wash your hands regularly. It makes a big difference.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. A 6 to 12 month stint in the behaviour school will straighten out even the most delinquent student, according to the Department of Education's Deputy Regional Director Marie Roberts. She says the secret to getting children to behave is to help them better understand their schoolwork through intense tutoring, which the school will provide.
Often children's misbehaviour is associated with failure to be successful at school, and so the focus of the learning program in this school will be around general syllabus areas and the general curriculum.
Classes will consist of 7 students, a teacher and teacher's aide. Each student will have an education program tailored to their specific needs to ensure they can return to their original school as soon as possible. Ms Roberts denied the school would be used as a dumping grounds for problem students, saying behaviour schools had been tried and tested elsewhere with great success.
What we know is that when you can improve a child's learning, you can improve their behaviour, and as a consequence they finish, so we know that their life chances are improved.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Enjoying a form revival heading into the business end of the season, the fallout from John's run-in with officials is drama the team could do without. In spite of the controversy, Coach Michael Hagan says the players are in good spirits.
The team would certainly feel that it's got something to prove in the next week or two, and that our season's still very much alive, and we're looking forward to the end of season games.
On a positive note, the rest of the first grade squad is free of major injury, with Luke DeVico and Riley Brown returning to the top 17. If past fit, teenager Jared Mullen will once again be thrust into the spotlight in the coveted number 7 jersey.
He may have come into the team off the bench anyway, so it just means he'll take another step forward and find himself at halfback this weekend.
Hagan says he'll wait until later in the week to name a replacement captain for the clash with the Cowboys.
I think the senior players need to take some ownership of the team, so we might have people like Danny Badiris and Steve Simpson, maybe Matty Gidley, that would share that role this week.
The Knights will hold a final training session tomorrow morning before leaving for Townsville on Thursday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Mentally, it was kind of weird. You know, if you've been out for a few months injured, you kind of like get on with it. And this time it was a strange feeling going out there because I thought maybe it wasn't going to happen again, that I could get out there and play.
The Hockeyroos are one of the best teams in the world, and it's events such as the National Schools Championship that keep Australia on top.
This is the breeding ground. There's been a lot of the girls come through the under-16s, and a lot of the states are very proud to say their girls played in this carnival.
Run for over 30 years, the round-robin event pits the 7 states and the ACT against each other during a week of competition. The Newcastle facility this year chosen as an ideal host.
It's probably one of the best facilities in the state. People like coming here. Again, it's a regional area, so we tend to be able to look after people really well.
One of the championship heavyweights flexed its muscle this afternoon as New South Wales took on the girls from the Apple Isle. The Blues were unstoppable, Emily Hertz showing why she's a vital part of the Australian junior side, making a mockery of Tasmania's defence. Then a well-worked corner fell for Gemma Delamont, whose thunderous shot delivered a warning to the competition. In this afternoon's other fixture, the ACT took on the girls from South Australia, Sarah Stewart finding a way around the territory keeper to earn her side a hard-fought draw. The finals of the championship will be held on Saturday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Kelly Rankmore and her 3 young children have been living in this one room in her parents' home for the past 3 months. In that time, she's applied for community housing as well as 119 private rental properties, all of which she's been rejected for.
I'm thinking of going to refuge because it's just getting stressful because I'm a handicapped brother and he's doesn't like little kids too much. So yeah, I'm just last option is going to refuge and try my luck there.
The Rankmores are not alone. Today, a conference was held on Newcastle's community and affordable housing crisis. According to Newmac's General Manager Greg Budworth, many low-income families don't meet the Department of Housing's criteria and are being forced into the expensive private rental market.
What a lot of low-income households are facing is housing stress. That means they're spending so much money on just getting housing that there's not enough available for the ongoing necessities of life.
Community housing organisations are hoping to gain the title deeds to the Department of Housing stock.
That gives us the ability to mortgage those properties and secure them for loans that we can develop our own stock.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
During their years of service with the Royal Australian Air Force, several of the Avon Sabres crashed. This one ploughed into houses at Mayfield in 1963, while 40 years ago tonight, another crashed in suburbia, this time at the junction, killing its 20-year-old pilot. News cameraman John Longworth was one of the first at the scene.
It was teeming rain, there was a lot of water and rubbish lying everywhere, debris, and George panned the light to our left through a broken window, and we saw the harness suspended from the ceiling beams and the pilot in there.
Press photographer Ron Morrison was also there as stories about the plane quickly spread.
They had bombs aboard that they were doing a night bombing, probably completely untrue, and then there was live ammunition liable to go off at any time, but it made all the journos that finally got there, and press photographers and TV cameramen, a little bit sort of nervous where they trod.
Witnesses saw the jet burst into flames moments before it crashed. Killed was young Williamtown pilot Warren Goddard. Tragically, valuable film of the aftermath has been lost.
The actual footage, unfortunately, has been lost, and along with other footage from that era, which is a great shame.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Swansea Channel is littered with man-made sand islands, and while they may look pretty, one of these mini ecosystems has been breeding an environmental enemy. Spectacle Island has an outcrop of prickly pear, one of the most invasive weeds ever imported into Australia.
Back in 1920s, it took over 58 million acres of land in New South Wales and Queensland, so it really is detrimental to the environment.
Lake Macquarie City Council and Landcare today brought in a superbug to sort things out. Cactoblastus cactorum is the fancy name for this caterpillar, which feeds on the flesh of the prickly pear pad, effectively destroying the weed from the inside out.
Their life cycle is they're a caterpillar, and then they pupate, turn into a moth, where they then lay the eggs on the infestation that we're trying to get rid of.
And just because the pest has been found on an island doesn't mean the problem's isolated.
I think a lot of this pear around here is drifting on the waterways and spreading around the area. Like Swansea Heads, I've found some cactus.
Sightings should be reported to local councils. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
At present in Australia, large-scale coal-fired power stations are our only means of regular electricity supply. As debate continues on an environmentally sustainable form of power generation for the future, European Commission-based Australian scientist Dr. Barry Green is trying to draw interest to fusion power. It's the energy source of the sun and stars that researchers are working to replicate.
The basic fuel of the fusion process is deuterium, and we find that in seawater, so everybody has access to water.
Electricity would be produced from another use of water to cool the fusion reactor, which operates at 100 million degrees centigrade. Fusion energy is currently being researched and developed by the ITER project, which is backed by 7 countries and has plans for commercial electricity production by 2050.
In the course of agreeing on this project, these countries have mapped out a route of development for fusion for the future beyond ITER.
Australia is yet to commit to the project, and Dr. Green believes unless the nation does, it will potentially deny our youth a future at the cutting edge of both science and electricity production.
The people that are doing the work will retire and leave the field with no young people to follow because they're not interested. Where's the future? If we do get involved, that will attract lots of people to the field.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
No matter what happens at the judiciary, Paul Harrigan says the game has been changed forever.
What the NRL have done now is really done or drawn a line in the sand that if anyone is verbalising in any way, any capacity, it's weeks off. And that's unprecedented, so they're going to have to live by that.
Johns isn't the first night to have a run-in with officials this season. Winger Anthony Quinn was punished for the same offence against the Storm in round 19.
As far as the night's concerned, we don't condone any verbalising or abusing of a referee. But just on this incident, we are contesting the severity. We think it's over the top.
John's defence team is expected to draw the judiciary's attention to incidents this season where players from other clubs were found guilty of coming into contact with officials.
Now, grade 3 compared to grade 4 for pushing, there's a bigger difference in that.
The Knights also attempted to quash speculation the halfback will consider leaving the NRL if tonight's decision goes against him.
Any speculation about Joey, wanting to go overseas or had enough, that is just it. It's speculation and rumour. We pay no attention to that. Everything's fine and dandy, and we want to get on with the season.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. The players and coach admit the season didn't go according to plan. A disjointed pre-season where coach Maria Lynch was sacked, just one aspect the club will look to correct.
And that's going to be the starting point for us, is making sure that our pre-season is strong, consistent, and we know exactly where we're heading.
The league's first male coach bore the brunt of criticism for the Jaegers' poor form, but John Fletcher says a strong finish to the campaign justified his appointment.
Well, Netball New South Wales have said that they're very supportive of what I've done this year. I have a 3-year contract, so I intend at this stage to honour that. I can't see any reason that I won't.
One of the team's major stumbling blocks has been consistency at training. With 9 of 16 Jaegers involved in State League commitments in Sydney each Wednesday, the full squad rarely practice together more than once a week.
Having said that, our State League side is doing very well, and it's a great program for us, so we need to keep incorporating that, but we just have to find a way to get 2 good trainings in a week.
On a personal note, Jane Altschwager says she's a slim chance of being selected in the Australian squad when it's named in a few weeks. If unsuccessful, she's looking forward to turning around her own fortunes, along with the Jaegers.
But at this stage, I've got no reason to move from Newcastle. I love it here, and I think Jaegers are going to be very exciting over the next couple of years.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
He's got another 2 years at the Knights. I mean, there's been suggestions today that he will jump ship and go to England. He has never said that. Finishing off his rugby league career in England, whenever that may be, is certainly an option that he's looked at, but he's got a few years to go in Australia before that.
The who's who of local rugby league were joined by some of the sport's royalty for the Newcastle competition's Night of Nights. Malcolm Reilly and Johnny Raper, just 2 of the game's legends on hand for the annual event. The major award of the night, Player of the Year, going to a very humble recipient.
Adrian McNabb scores 2 and wins the 2HD Konami Player of the Year.
Very fortunate to poll points in some of them games where I definitely thought other blokes would have.
McNabb's effort made even more impressive in a season where his wife Courtney spent 3 months in hospital.
It was probably a good thing, I suppose, playing footy and It was a good distraction, I suppose. I was down there and not worrying about things too much because at the time we were struggling a bit with football.
Other winners on the night included Rookie of the Year Jacob Jenkinson from Raymond Terrace. Leading point scorer went to Nelson Bay's Dane Queenan, while Chris Swan took out the award for leading try scorer as well as the coveted Players Player. Wyong skipper Dean Amos was named Representative Player of the Year. Scorpions mentor Daniel Quinn claimed coaching honours, while Western Suburbs claimed the club championship. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. With the distraction of John's suspension behind them, Newcastle's fully fit squad of 18 left for North Queensland with a new focus.
And the fact that we're going to Townsville, we'll probably get away from the pressure here a little bit, and I think we can get on with our preparation for Saturday night's game.
Coach Michael Hagan clearly relieved the champion halfback will be available for the opening week of the finals.
I think we might find a place for him. I guess it gives him, an opportunity to train, and he's not going to pick up any injuries. I guess that's the only real upside I can see from it.
Last night at the judiciary, it wasn't just the officials who came in for an apology.
I feel like I let all the players down in Newcastle, so I'll pay them back now and I'll get back.
During the hearing, the prosecution maintained John's outburst was one of the worst examples of abuse, a fact fiercely disputed by the Knights legal team.
Our prosecutor did a good job in pointing out that there were probably 10 or 20 things on a higher grade of verbal abuse than what was said.
CEO Ken Conway assuring league fans the number 7 has learned his lesson.
He went well and truly past what was reasonable and has expressed genuine remorse, and I'm sure he will keep his passions under a bit more control in future.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.